48-hour art check round 13. Right here. Round 213. I think. Did I say 213 or 13?
You said 13. I said. Yeah.
Okay. 213.
You were only a couple hundred off. It's fine.
Boom. Yeah, I just knocked off like the 200 or so episodes we've done. Okay, so, yeah, so it's been busy. I wasn't on the last check. Scott filled in, which is cool. So I'm actually excited because I've been so busy. I haven't even been able to watch it. So I can't wait to see what all you guys got done. But there might be a little bit of redundancy in catching up on what you did last time. Yeah. But yeah, so should we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So what did you get accomplished since the last art check?
So I made a video about how I rigged up this situation, and that looks like this. And so I got this guy moving and rigged up, and then I got the video that kind of shows like how all the different things are working on that. So I did that, and then I also rigged up the 3/4 front of this character, so you can see that her mouth is moving and has all the different things. And so I've got to kind of fix some of that stuff. There's some stuff that seems a little bit, doesn't seem like it's syncing up like it should, but so I'm still kind of fixing that. But those are the two main things that I've got.
Wow, that's quite impressive. And the cool thing is, I saw you post that on social media, the car that's all rigged up with like what are you calling it again?
It's a piston mech.
A piston mech. Okay, well, it's rad. It's just really cool and kind of mind blowing. And it's I think what you posted to Instagram too, the little like walkthrough of it is really cool, and it's a good example of kind of showing how the way you kind of work with animation is like you learn a trick, and it's a complicated, it's hard work, but it's still there's a trick to it, and then there's good art behind it, and then you learn another trick, and then you combine the two tricks, and it starts looking like more and more complicated. And the basis of it is like the basis of these two things that you're showing on there. It was neat for me, who's like followed you through this, to see that you're kind of combining the two like plugins that you discovered like it's only like a couple months ago. I guess maybe 4 months ago or half a year ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not that long ago. And kind of combining them to this effect where it creates this really just insanely cool result. So it's just been fun to watch, man. Like, yeah.
I think one of the biggest things that I don't know, it just comes a little bit naturally to me, but a lot of people seem to struggle with it, is I don't really follow instructions. I just kind of like figure out how stuff works. And then if you know how something works, then you can figure out, like what you can do with it. And so like, if you understand what it's doing, rather than like, I followed the tutorial, so I can do exactly what the tutorial says. I'm like, what does this tool do? You know? And then you can kind of apply it to like other things. And cause I mean, there's nothing that I've seen that goes through and shows, how to rig up a vehicle with moving legs, but like, but a lot of this came from when I did that first Wasp, because the Wasp had, they have like 2 knees on 6 legs rather than, one knee on each leg. And anyway, so I figured out how to make rubber hose do something that I don't think it was necessarily intended to do.
Yeah.
And that just kind of comes through. But yeah, it's kind of fun. So I would just say, if you're figuring something out, like don't just figure out how to follow the instructions, but figure out like, what does it do? and like how does it do that stuff? Because like that's like in illustration and animation, everything. Like if you understand like how the brush works or like how ink works, rather than like, oh, I've followed what, you know, my favorite illustrator uses this ink, so do I, you know. But like if you like know, oh, that ink, if you put it on a razor blade, you can drag it and make buildings or whatever. Anyway, it's kind of just a fun little thing.
No, it's incredibly cool to see, and I agree with that approach, because like there's hardly anything I learned in illustration, or you know, especially with doing digital work, with like more effectively than the ways when I just basically jump in the deep end and figure some stuff out. And then once you figure out kind of the mechanics of it, it's easy to start using it in ways it's not meant to be used to get the result you need. And so like, I totally agree. I also think project-based learning, I don't know, maybe we can tack that on as our very short topic or something at the end, but project-based learning is the way to go. I taught with a couple of people who taught the other way. There's kind of two philosophies in teaching, and there's still a lot of very methodical, like rote learning type teachers on college campuses.
Right.
And I've never had a stronger disagreement with people on methods of learning, because I think maybe some people learn well in that way of like follow the 5 things and then you get a shiny metal lettering or something. But I find that like usually learning the tools gives you much more freedom, because if you just learn that one trick, then you're just going to be doing step-based thinking, and that quells all creativity. So anyhow, we can get into that later if we want. Yeah, cool. That's a ton. I feel less interesting following up with follow up so far on the status of my book. It's still just pending with publishers, so I haven't heard much back. The publisher who kind of expressed interest in my stuff, but not in that particular book, I haven't heard quite anything yet. I might follow up with my literary agent, but I also know these things usually take like 4 to 5 months, or not 4 to 5 months, sorry, 4 to 5 weeks. Yeah. So I might want to hang a little longer to kind of doing that. And then the pace has really picked up in my day job. And so I have been working like extra hard, because I'm doing a lot more design work than I would do as an art director. It's kind of reminding me of my first year art directing, when I tried to do the entire work of a team on my own, which is a first-time manager kind of mistake. But because of some of the limitations of working remotely, there are certain, like a lot of things that I have to handle myself. And usually I have a team of like 10 people doing it. So I've been on overdrive, like working on that. I also keep noticing the shots keep changing and shifting.
I've got trying to keep it interesting.
That is so cool. Oh man, that's amazing. Anyhow, so let me share what I did get done with all that qualification out of the way. So I have been in the interim of freelancing and stuff like that, getting writing done for the next book. And so far I have, I don't know, like 3 chapters kind of loosely like roughed out. So this may not seem like a lot of writing, but keep in mind, I think the first book, if I compiled the script of it, would be like maybe 20 or 30 pages long. Yeah. So usually, roughly, I'd say like a script at minimum is usually about like prose. For me, like when I write, it's about 4 to 5 pages per page. So my comics will be 4 to 5 pages per page of prose. So anyhow, so I feel like I'm making progress on that. And it's that point where I have my story structure and I know where I'm heading with it, and it's kind of a filling in the blanks, spaghetti at the wall moment. So there's a lot of like, not that well written stuff in it, but I'm just letting it be. I'm really avoiding the kind of getting in there and critically editing. It's almost like when you're writing, it's very similar to illustration in the sense of you don't want to just start like polishing your sentences before you've gotten through the first kind of blast of it. Right. Because if you start refining every word, you end up in that noodly stage where like you're drawing a life model and you get their eye right, and then everything else just sucks about the drawing. Like if all you focus on is like the one eyeball, so it's like better to start holistically and then work your way from that to detail. So like I do the same thing with writing. I try to kind of get a junk part done, but I feel good about it. I feel like I got a lot of writing done, and it's been kind of cool because I don't want to start on the book yet. Like I feel like I want to actually write the script for like the majority of the second book, because that's easier to do with the kind of like pending, looming, like what will happen with the first book. And it is also easier to put on pause if like something does move with that, where I'm going to have to like put everything on pause and kind of get moving on that. So so that's kind of where I'm at on that, and then just working for some really pretty fun clients at my day job and stuff. But just happy to honestly have work in that time ring. So so that's kind of where I'm at. I was kind of hoping to do more music recording, and I haven't really found a window to do that. And I think that's mainly because it's just like when you're at a stay-at-home situation and you got a 6-year-old, it's just like recording time is pretty minimal. Where you're gonna have time where it's quiet. So so that's pretty much where I'm at. So what were your kind of, what I always botch this one and say struggles, which sounds so bad. Let's say
my
challenges.
Struggles.
What were your challenges that you faced?
I've accidentally gone nocturnal again. so I have a week in between semesters, and so I went to bed last night at 5:30 in the morning, and so so I'm now working from like 11 p.m. to 4 or 5 a.m., which isn't so much a struggle as much as it is just kind of like weird and annoying, because I woke up today at like 1 in the afternoon, and then whatever. So
I get it.
Weirdness, but then I get to spend the afternoon, my morning with the family and whatever, and then kind of finish everything. But I've got to kind of switch it back before school starts again.
Yeah, that's going to be a adjustment. That's one of the tough things, because I think you're similar to me in personality, where you kind of tend to be a creature of the night in the sense of work. And so I have the same struggle where it's like I've been holding like my regular hours with my telecommuting,
right?
And that's mainly kind of self-imposed because I need a restriction on the amount of time I'm working. And then also like, it does give like a semblance of normalcy to like my routine and schedule, which it's not bad to have a routine when it's things like one of my routines is working out. One of my routines is working on my book. Like those are good routines. I don't want to break them,
Right.
So, but yeah, it is tough because I do find that I just keep being up super late. Either working or not working, just noodling around, because I worked really hard, and then I'm like, I've worked really hard at work and I worked really hard on my personal projects, so I'm just gonna relax and fall into that hole,
Right.
So so that's, anyhow, my point is I relate to that.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Anything else with the like, since the last check?
Nothing else on challenges really. I mean, just normal stuff with, all the COVID, being locked up is weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been the same for a while.
So Frank in the chat said Corey is a wizard. I think that was in regards to the cool stuff. And then also Abe said he loved those old wagons, which I agree. Those are really cool.
Yeah, man. The Grand Wagoneer, that's like my dream car. I don't know why. They just look so awesome.
They are super rad, especially the era where it was like legit wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Kayla's saying she became nocturnal around the beginning of the lockdown. So, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's I don't know, man. And Abe is feeling the flip schedule as well. So yeah, it's I don't know, like everybody leaves you alone.
Yeah.
Getting the interruptions or anything. So it's good, but it's also weird. So
yeah. Yeah. So I would relate to that and kind of repeat that. Like that's one of my issues is like kind of getting the sleep on schedule. And then the other challenge is just like I've also been taking on weeding the yard. And before our last art check, I kind of forgot that I'm almost 40. And so I went for 4 or 5 hours just straight, just pulling weeds like nonstop with no breaks, no water, just, as if I was, 20 and mowing somebody's lawn or doing yard work for them. That's like not the same. So my wife has wisely been like, no, make sure you're not overdoing it, dude. Because I was just, it was like when you do way too much at the gym and then you walk out of the gym and you're like, what did I do? Yeah. So that's been kind of a challenge, but it's a fun challenge. It's nice to have the time like between work I'm doing, at work to be able to like go in the backyard and work on it a little bit. And then if I get an email, boom, back to work. Yeah. That's not something you can do at the office, Right. So it's not like you can just go, okay, cool. We're a little slow right now. I'm going to pull some weeds and then I'll come back. So that's been fun. But yeah, other than that, just like literally just fighting to stay consistent with writing, which is not as like I like writing, I enjoy it, but it's not as natural to me as like illustration is. Like when I get in a zone with an art project, it's a lot easier to kind of stay on target and like hit my goals. But with writing, it is hard. It's because it's a little different than what I do all the time. Right. It is a bit of a struggle to like actually get to the page and get progress done and like write and just kind of trust the process. Mm-hmm. Cause like there is inevitably also when you're doing the junk version of your story, you're just like, I don't know, is this any, it really isn't going to be any good. That's kind of the point. Right, but yeah. There's that second guessing when you're like, well, I don't know, like, is this working? Do I really know how to write? And I know from previously doing it that like, no. What I do is like 4 different, like I do multiple revisions on it on my own. And then I send it to trusted friends and family and have them take like an editor's eye to it and really polish it as well. So it's like, but it is funny because it's like I catch myself like having a struggle to like even get to it. Right. So that's interesting too, but totally rambly. So anyhow,
now writing's interesting because I've been doing kind of the same thing as I'm trying to write dialogue, and it's just like, because I remember I had this conversation with my daughter and she was like, well, isn't writing dialogue easy? Because you just like write, what people would say in a conversation. And I was like, yeah, you would think, but not at all. Like it's not even remotely close to like that. So yeah,
Nice.
it's interesting. I don't know, but yeah, writing's weird.
I like that it looked as though your character was speaking.
Yeah,
so cool.
if I'm doing this correctly, then her lips should be syncing up to my voice right now, which is what I'm trying to get set up. So I think I've got everything right. I've just got to get it right. But I mean, I think that's good. And then for some reason my this one has kind of broken a little bit, which is the front facing one. So I've got to figure that out.
Huh.
But, yeah. So
man. Cool. So let's get into plans. So what are your plans for the next Artcheck?
Plans. I plan to, let's see. So I got this done. I've got the other guy done. Yeah, so I have my two characters. I haven't thought of that yet until just now. Other two characters done. I need to do some backgrounds. I've been doing a lot of research on Huel, the guy who does the artwork and animation for the Gorillaz music videos.
Oh, nice. Tank Girl too.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So he co-created Tank Girl and then coupled with the dude from Blur, and they made the Gorillaz. And they do a bunch of experimental animation where they're mixing a bunch of stuff. And so I can pull this up. So I've been looking at a lot of what they're doing. I'll just do it here. Been looking at what a lot of they're doing, and I'm gonna experiment a lot with it. But one of the things that I'm constantly trying to do is not have to do backgrounds. So especially in animation. And so anyway, let me just pull this up and do this here. So what I've noticed that lately they have been doing a lot of photographic stuff or video. And so I'm going to get into some motion tracking or whatever, but like this is a photograph and then they've illustrated over the top of it. This is video, but he's got like a filter over it. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of that stuff where they're looking at, where you're looking at like, this is a couch and then you draw somebody onto it or whatever. So I've been kind of toying with that type of stuff. So anyway, I've got to figure out a way to do that and make it so that I can do the animation over the top of moving video. And so if you look at like some of the more recent like Song Machine videos that they've been releasing this week, a lot of them will have moving cameras and the animation is tracking with the moving camera. And if that's off by just a pixel, people will see it. And so I want to figure that out. And I'm wondering if they're doing the movement of the camera in post or if they've just got really good camera tracking software. So anyway, so I'll figure that out. Cool. And I'm going to lay down some vocal tracks and I'm putting together my pitch for getting people to submit their artwork to end up in the animation with me. So that's kind of my plan. That was a long rambling answer to say, keep going on the thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Also, Oro, sorry, is sponsoring my next video. So they sent me some stuff. And so I'm going to make a little studio tour for them. They're like a heated apparel company, and it's pretty cool. So it's like electrically heated with like stuff. So
that's really cool, especially for where you live. Actually, you're kind of a really good candidate for that.
Right? Yeah. When I was talking to them, I was like, "Yeah, it snowed." They're like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah," and it snowed today, another couple inches. So it's not sticking to the roads, but it's on everybody's lawns still. And so it'll make for some good shots. I'm going to take the motorcycle out and test what it's like biking in their in their clothing at like sub-freezing temperatures. So,
That's awesome. That's really cool. That's exciting. I'm glad to hear who the sponsor was too. So
it'll be cool. I didn't want to say anything until I had like signed contract and everything, but they were really cool to work with, and so I'm pretty excited about it. They seem like an awesome company, and their products are amazing. So I'm kind of excited to do that. Kayla's asking, hypothetically, would you motion track the camera to the main animation you are doing, and then if you need to move the background, you would animate that separately?
You'd want to do reverse, right? Like, wouldn't you want to kind of have the live footage first, like shoot the background kind of pretending the characters are there, almost maybe, you know, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit style, where maybe you even put like a finger puppet or just like a stick where the character is going to be while you're tracking the camera, and then map it to the footage, which would be a headache. But I'd imagine the reverse would be like, unless you, like you said, they have like some crazy software. I'd imagine that would be really hard to do in reverse, where you shoot it after the animation.
I probably wouldn't shoot it after the animation. And a lot of it is going to be still photographs that I'm going to make look animated. But some of it will be like, I'm just going to take my car out on the freeway and just film out the window. Right. And then I don't have to motion track anything. I'll do the Muppet thing where like the bottom of the frame cuts off where things connect, and I'll just have stuff drag by and stuff like that. But anything that's actually tracking movement, I'll probably shoot the footage first and then get it afterwards. And I might just put a call out to people in different parts of the country, so it doesn't always look like High Plains Desert, Idaho. And just say, hey, anybody who's got something that looks like this, give me 60 seconds of footage.
If you like crazy desert scenes, man, like the place they shot the Kill Bill church is out in Lancaster, and then like the end of Seven with like the head, that was in Lancaster. So it's like there's a lot of like sparse, just like empty desert kind of stuff. So if you really need like some apocalyptic desert landscapes, let me know. I'll shoot it.
I will definitely take you up on that 100%. So
sweet. All right. So
how about you? What are your plans?
So my main goal is very similar, just more of the same. Like, I need to keep getting writing moving and kind of moving through that process. My hope is to have maybe another chapter or two drafted out. I'd like to be at a point where I can start kind of polishing it, but I still have a little bit of a ways to go. But I'm liking where it's heading. And like I kind of mentioned this last time, but there is this neat thing that kind of occurs when you're in the thick of writing, like at this stage where like certain threads start tying together, that some that were totally planned and then some that are like happy accidents and kind of come up in the process. And that's been really fun and cool to see. So I want to keep moving on that with the little windows of time I get.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wanted to show an example of kind of what I was talking about. But yeah, I like that idea of like, you kind of leave stuff open, and if you write it well, sometimes stuff just works, and other times you can plan it out. This is like one of the more recent. This is Aries. So that is not footage. That stuff that they set up in layers, that is footage. And then they've just run like a filter over it. But you can see, like, you can't see the wheels touching the ground. And so with the wheels not touching the ground, I don't want to play too much of that or we'll get our video tagged. But with the wheels not touching the ground, you don't have to have like a perfect motion cap. They're traveling along the same where you would expect them to or whatever. So anyway. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's totally doable. And like Hewlett's illustrations are really cool too. Like even the still shots, I think could be really inspiring for ways to animate and integrate, like, photo with like line art. And actually the neat thing is there's some forms of art that don't work so great with that method. And the neat thing is you're already working in a style that works pretty effectively if done right, like if chosen right, like if you choose the right kind of backgrounds, it should work really fluidly with the way, because you have a really heavy line, and that really helps translate, when you're doing that live action.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually kind of ideal in that sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping, because I think it's kind of a cool, I don't know, it's just a cool style to be able to do that in. But also it'll be somewhat time saving, hopefully, to be able to do that. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun to kind of analyze how everything's going and how it's working and whatever. But
I love it.
Yeah.
I love the the reverse engineering kind of we mentioned too. So cool. All right. So do you want to touch on that topic of like teaching, or is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, we could touch on that topic of teaching. This is that where the camera is moving. If you look at just that shot, just for a second, they're actually on a boat, and everything just tracks perfectly. Anyway, it's pretty awesome.
That's pretty incredible. I wonder if the boat was still.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to tell, but like it doesn't seem like it. And this one, he's not like sitting on anything anyway. And there's a lot of just footage of not cartoon, but then you've got Noodle here. Obviously that's not moving that much. But yeah. But anyway, I mean, After Effects has some stuff where, you've got motion tracking and whatever. I've never done it. So yeah.
Well, it'll be a good learning experience, I think, too.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah. So I might have to call up Kayla, because I've seen her do a little motion tracking before. So we'll see how it goes.
Ooh, nice. Cool. So
yeah. So let's run the thing, and then we'll do a little topic here.
Okay.
Today's topic is project-based learning versus, I don't know, Sage on the stage. What do you want to call the other?
Rote learning.
Rote learning. Okay. Yeah. So both Josh and I have taught. I'm still teaching, and I think both of us kind of subscribe to the idea that people learn better when they have a project that they're working on, rather than just like follow these steps or memorize this thing or do this thing. And so like one of my most successful classes, I actually do both of those things. And so I find kind of the rote learning, the step-by-step stuff, really beneficial to get people up to speed really quickly on something like that. And so the first 2 weeks of that semester is just like those worksheets that you get when you're a kid that are like, 3 columns, here's the written instructions and here's the example. And then you make it look like the example. And it's super boring, but I'm able to teach all of the tools in that software really fast. Right. And I always tell people, like, if this is why you are taking this class, then you're done. 2 weeks in, you're finished. You can drop now. Because the rest of the semester we actually do projects. And what I find is that people feel like they understand something when they do when they do a worksheet like that. And then you test their mettle in a project and they realize, oh, I might have understood it, but I don't know it. I don't know it in my gut. Because really knowing how to do something, you don't think like, oh, what is the next step? You just flow with the creativity and try to create the thing. There's not as much like memory recall as there is just intuition. And so my goal as a teacher is to get the skills and thinking of how to do this stuff deeper into that student, and so that it becomes intuitive. But you start with that kind of lecture-based rote kind of memorization stuff. But if that's the only thing you're getting out of class, I hope it's a lower level class. I hope it's a 100 level class.
Yeah. So I agree with that too. Like, because I do think there's a bit of rote that's inevitable, and usually it does have to do with tools.
Yeah.
Like, and I almost view it as like, if we're like wood shop teachers, right? It's like that walkthrough of wood shop. Like, hey, this is a circular saw. This is how it works. This is the safety precautions you want to use around this saw. Okay.
Right. Here's
These
how
are the other tools.
Cut things of your body off.
Yeah. Yeah. And then maybe you start simple where you're like, okay, we're going to just take this piece of wood and make a box, like a wood box. And then you kind of work from there. But, the neat thing, like, so there's a bit of rote in that, in the sense of like, you have to introduce people to the tools. You need to provide them with the tools, right? And explain kind of how they work. And if need be, like, when I've taught like early Illustrator, right? Like one of the easiest ways to get somebody used to the pen tool, which is like 90% of Illustrator. Well, that and the Pathfinder, like those are like your two best friends. And to get comfortable with using the pen tool and anchor points and stuff like that, it's often really good to just have an introductory thing of like, hey, here's the Batman logo, trace it, right?
Yeah.
Something that has some curves that are hard to do. One of my favorite things is have people redraw a Fender Telecaster, because it just has this weird curve that if people don't understand anchor points, like you instantly see that little blip of a crappy anchor point, and you can kind of get into that and be like, yeah, that's going to print. It looks wobbly because your anchor points are mispointed and stuff. So that stuff, yeah, good, have like rote learning. But for like, I think lifelong learning and stuff, I do think really orienting around projects, and then not only just projects, but projects people actually care about. Like those are kind of the key ways I think people retain learning. Because like I've had students who have to work on assignments where they're like, I'm not even interested in this, and like, you can kind of gear their interest and stoke their interest, and inevitably in the workforce they're going to have to work on stuff they're not interested in.
Yeah, right.
But at the end of the day, most of the time, if it's something that fits within their own interest, where it's like a shared objective and a shared goal, I find that like people actually learn really well. So if they are really big fans of like we were just talking about Jamie Hewlett, like I had a few students like when I was teaching LCAD that were huge fans of Jamie Hewlett.
Yeah.
And yet they never really messed with working using photographs. Like in a collage way with illustration. And I was like, well, that's kind of that's the whole Gorillas thing. Like that's the look. That's, and when they describe it, like usually that was one of the appeals for them with it. So it's like, why not mess with that? Why not try not mimic his style, but just try to kind of pick up the things that are moving you about that and integrate it into your project. And then that's the easiest way to get people to start actually learning how to do photo manipulation, right? Because if they're in a Photoshop class and they're just like, I don't know, what's the classic Photoshop, like the mask where you like type a word and then you hit like the mask key and it just like the image behind it is in the layers of your word and you can change the word. The image is still through it. It's like the gimmicky Photoshop class stuff. That's the stuff I'm not really. I haven't seen a lot of fruit from that from courses that are like that. And I did notice when I was teaching, teachers who taught more strictly in a rote learning fashion, by the end of the semester would have students who didn't have really great portfolios. And I would teach the same course, and like they'd have like, don't get me wrong, there were teachers way better and had way better results from their students, but I have to say, like in comparison to the rote teachers, usually just the quality and the conceptual skill of those students was like hard to even compare.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about like high level classes. I'm talking like intro level classes, like introduction to Photoshop kind of thing, where it's just a very base level class that's all about the tool. It still can be engaging and be more, I think memorable. And I think when you're a student, I think a lot of students don't know this, and so maybe they'll enroll with instructors who are just strictly rote learning. And maybe that's not the instructor to enroll with. Like I don't want to get students in a path of that, because sometimes it's good to work with teachers and authority figures you may not like, because like once again in the workforce you're going to have to do that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not a bad kind of way to like start analyzing like how do you best learn as a student, like and I think a lot of the time as creatives, we're way more interested and incentivized to work hard and learn and gain information if it's actually valuable and interesting to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is Kayla's bringing up something that I say at the beginning of every semester when I'm describing my teaching style. She said, the scariest moment of my college career, quote, I'm going to kick you in the deep end of the pool, go make a sandwich and come back and see if you're still swimming. Actually, what I really say is I'm going to line you up at the deep end of the pool, kick you square in the back, and then go make a sandwich and come back and see who's drowned. So she's actually made me sound a lot nicer than I but that is exactly how I do that. And the reason is I have found, and this is why I think project-based learning works, even if you're not in a classroom environment. So let's take it into where a lot of the people watching this might be, where they're on their own or they're trying to improve on their own. What I would recommend is doing a project in that situation too, because a project will force you to do stuff that a tutorial will not force you to do.
Yep.
And so if like Josh right now is writing a story, when he goes to draw that, he might not know how to draw one of the things that he's written, but the story demands it. So he's going to have to figure it out. And it's not like he can, I mean, you could, but it would be dumb, say, oh, I don't know how to draw that, so I'm going to change the story. What you're going to do is you're going to say, no, I need to learn that because of whatever. And I do the same thing where it's like, I'm going to do an animation and the animation calls for this, and I don't know how to do that. And that doesn't mean that you don't have choices, because we'll both sit down and say, well, I could think of like 6 different ways to do this. 2 of them seem like that it'll take me 6 months. And so the other 4, let's figure out how to do that, where it only takes a few days or a few weeks to be able to pull that off. But those projects call on you to do that stuff. And one of the reasons that I say that at the beginning of every semester is I think the alleviation of pain is memorable. And so people will remember the solutions to pain. And so if I just tell you, like right now, I could tell you, okay, the trick that I've learned is that you parent the controllers of the rubber hose plug-in to the object that they do, that they follow. Done, right? I can say that, everybody hears those words, and some people might even understand what I said. But until that actual thing, until you come to that solution to a problem that has caused you pain, you've been suffering, you've been struggling, whatever, students will come to me and they'll say, I worked on this for like 4 hours last night and I just can't figure it out. And then I click like 2 buttons and it solves the problem. They will remember those 2 buttons because it was the elimination of pain. I would not have had that experience. In fact, most of the time I have already showed them that stuff in the first 2 weeks of the semester, which was like the rote learning section. Which
is part of why you do the rote. Like you don't do the rote because everyone's going to remember the tools. That's why rote learning isn't the best, at least in my opinion, because the issue is like, if you just do tutorials, right, you learn in that box how to do it. And you quickly forget how to do it because it's step by step. And so it's kind of equivalent to like cramming before a history exam, and you're memorizing dates, locations, names, and you're memorizing it to the point of the test. And then after the test, like 2 years later, you're not going to remember the names, the dates, right? The reason you'll remember names and dates is if they have significance, right? Like not just based on like, oh, well, I need to be able to fill in the blank for this. And so that's where like Corey's dead on about that. It's like when you're in that deep end of the pool, that's where you're going to think back to that rote learning moment and go, oh, there was something. And I can't remember, but I know there's a tool that fixes this. I know we went over it. Can't remember it. I'm going to struggle through it. And then when you actually discover that tool for real, and it's like Corey was saying, it solves your pain. That's where you'll actually recall it. I also like that it was brought up the idea of kind of being thrown in the deep end, because that's also a difference in the teaching method too. The reason there's a lot of people still at colleges and stuff who just do rote learning is that generally they're not going to get like bad evaluations from students, because it's an easy class to take. You just do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, and you pass. Like it's very mapped out. And so it's safe, it's mapped out. But here's the thing about creativity. Creativity is very dangerous. It's not mapped out. Ink can be used a certain way, but there's also art that's just splattering ink, right? It's art and creativity are the thing that take the norm and the box and kind of crack it and screw with it and like put it in a place it's not supposed to be. Like Corey was talking about with his solution with the animation, he's using tools that are meant for something, for other things that they're not meant for. But the beauty of it is they work for that result. And that's the kind of creative like problem solving that like I think, you know, we need to as artists be seeking, is like the idea of being able to learn tools, not just so that, you know, hey, I can use a screwdriver with this one screw and forget the fact that like that screwdriver has like a million different functions and can help you in multiple ways, right? Mm-hmm. The rote learning thing will give you like a very limited window on the tool and not really give you the true value of it. And so it's like when you're kind of in the fire and in the thick of things, that's when you learn. That's the catch. That's the kind of hard catch, is that the project-based learning is harder. It like any of us could go on YouTube and follow like a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 kind of tutorial. And those are good for introductory stuff.
Right.
But, you know, it's a lot harder and a lot more creatively challenging. And Corey will love this, but that I'm mentioning it, but it's hard to automate. When you start getting this, taking the system, the tool, and utilizing it in a creative fashion outside of that step 1, step 2 box, and using multiple tools to kind of solve a problem. So that's what I kind of think of, like when you're like really what we're doing as artists is we're creating projects, right? But projects aren't really projects, they're problems. That's what our projects are. Like all of us as artists just make our own problems. When we're working on our own personal art, it's just a new problem that you've just by choice introduced into your life, and now you have to solve it. And like Corey was talking about, you know, that problem might be a story you wrote, and if you're being true to the story and you know it's going to require like, you know, a drawing of a freeway overpass with every car on the freeway, and it has to be in perfect 3/4 perspective, and you've never drawn that, you've just made yourself a problem. But that's the thing. In finding that solution, you're going to remember, you're going to learn new things, and you're going to apply them. The other thing that's tough about teaching in that style is students often want a very like one-word answer. Like, what's the solution? And there's 50 solutions. Yeah. And so I also think it's a harder style to teach, because sometimes it's a way of teaching where you know the answer and you're holding back so they can mention the 50 answers. Right. Because your answer may not be the best. In fact, in teaching, I've found that like students sometimes would come up with better solutions than I came into the class that I'm teaching knowing. for certain projects. And I'd be like, that's a really cool way to use this tool. I didn't think of that, Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah.
And I never want to be the type of teacher who rules that out, and so
for sure,
the type that's going to be like, the type that's going to be like, no, I am the decider. I am the person who knows the things and you are the learner. And it's like, no, sometimes you don't know what's going on, and that's fine. And that's okay. Like, you're here to guide people to discovery, not to like, vomit knowledge that they have to slurp up off the ground. So anyway.
And Kayla was just saying, I do wrote for classes I don't care about, classes for project classes for stuff I do. So that's a really good way of putting it. But yeah, I think as artists, like, look up tutorials, but often, like, think outside of the tutorial and realize, like, if all you do is know like a trick that allows you to make a word look like Chrome at the end of it or something, and it's within a certain box, and it's always going to have the same background and kind of look like the tutorial, you got to think, how is that going to make anyone like want to employ you or like make your art stand out? Because that can be automated. Like, if it can be step 1, step 2, step 3, that can be automated. So think about like the outside of the box stuff that machines can't do, like Corey is always reiterating, right? All right. I think, is there anything we missed? I mean, I haven't taught in a while, but it's still the method I manage with too. It's like, I don't, I don't see a better method. I wish there were. I kind of sometimes do wish that it were as easy as saying like, well, you just do these 3 steps and then boom, problem solved. And it's not always that simple.
Yeah. I don't know if there is a better method or not, because, basically, I think that humans are built. Just wanted to put that on there. I think that humans are built to learn by experience, to not to learn by memorization. I think that's how we survive. I think basic in our DNA, we have very little genetic memory. And so like storytelling and experience are kind of how we do that. And so memorization isn't super useful unless you apply it. Because I've memorized lots of things. But if I never use it, it's gone. But if I use it, it stays. And so, yeah, I agree. So anyway, whether you're in school or not in school, I think you can take that and apply that. And I think that's why I think it's important to do projects. Like, go make a project and you'll learn tons of stuff.
And do a 48-hour Artcheck with a friend who will keep you on that project. So
absolutely. There's a couple of those going on. You should go check those ones out too. But anyway, so Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at joshuakemble.com and quarterlystories.com for a brief preview on my graphic novel that's currently being shopped to publishers on faith and mental illness. It's handwritten, hand-lettered, and hand-inked. Corey, where can everybody find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. That Linktree link will take you to everywhere else. And so if you're interested in seeing like in depth how I did that car, the Wagoneer piston mech, then you can check that out on YouTube. If you want to see kind of a quick carousel gloss over of how I did it, you can check it out on Instagram. If you want to be really helpful, you can check it out on both and like and comment, and that would be awesome. But yeah,
you guys should. It's wizardry, I tell you.
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know. I know it's at this point, it's like, to me, it just seems like tiny things, but it's tiny things that are like layered. So it seems confusing, but it's, once you figure out all the layers, it's not that confusing. So, all right, we will see you guys on Monday. Go make stuff.
All right, bye.